Welcome to Essential Dynamics. I'm Derek Hudson, host of the Essential Dynamics podcast, and I've developed the Essential Dynamics framework to help us figure out how to accomplish more in the organizations and endeavors that we do as people. And on the podcast, we discuss these things and learn more about it through deep conversations with interesting people. And I'm happy to bring back Dr. Jason Daniels. Thanks for coming back, Jason.
Thanks for having me back.
Hey, that was a great conversation last time. I feel like there was so many threads that I wanted to pull on, and one of the things I wanted to say is, "Oh, this and this and this and this and this all fit essential dynamics this way," but I'm not gonna do that. The listener can piece those together himself or herself. But what I would like to do is just kinda illustrate one situation, one, factor that impacts organizations, and then we're going to parallel it to human psychology.
Sure.
Because like the we're in individual people are an organism, and groups of people you can think of as an organism. So uh, an organization like a company or a team or people on a project or something like that, they're working together, and um, problems get in the way, and you solve the problems. And we're trying to produce an output, and there are things that limit the production of the output. And so we refer to the theory of constraints, which is an established body of work where in any complex system, there's one limiting factor that's limits more than the other ones. That's the one you have to pay attention to, what we call the constraint. And if you can get more flow through that constraint, you get more output. And any other improvement you make in the system doesn't make it through. So Dr. Goldratt, who came up with this, as he learned about it, realized that it's management's job, the leadership of an organization's job, to find that constraint and to give it more capacity or remove it. And when they do that, then a new constraint pops up someplace else that has just a little bit more capacity. And you deal with that one. And eventually, the constraint of the organization, if you think about it this way, is the capacity that leadership has to pay attention to things. Because anything they pay attention to can get better, but they can't pay attention to everything. And I've read some of your work on attention and distraction. And we live in a world today where more than ever before, everything's coming at you. You don't have to even try to have all kinds of things distract you away from what you're trying to do. And I think it's similar in organizations. And I've seen it in all kinds of different ways. Like, number one, you don't know what to pay attention to, or a leadership team may know that there's a particular issue that they do need to pay attention to, but it's a hard one. So maybe they could pay attention to something else like a rebrand or an acquisition or, renovating the head office. And so we really have a capacity, or we have a tendency to avoid paying attention to the right things and then find it really hard to pay attention to them once, even when we figure it out. And I don't know if it's that different for organizations than people. And I've thought a lot about the organization side, but I'm interested in just your reaction to that thought based on where you're coming from.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of synergy between kind of the ideas that you talk about between organizational and the individual. I think with attention, I think one of the things to understand about human processing, and I think organizations are made up of humans, so even if it's an organization, there's processing this can take place in there. Is we are cognitive economizers. We tend to, all things being equal, try to uh, follow the path of least resistance. That's kind of the natural tendency that we have as humans. And so when it comes to attention, lots of times it's almost like what's the phrase, the tail wagging the dog sometimes, where we got stuff coming at us, and a lot of times what we will kind of naturally tend towards is what's the thing that requires the least amount of effort currently right now, and kind of there's a tendency to follow that process. Um, and that in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think there's a lot of benefits to being able to automate certain types of processes. So if we think about learning any basic skill, like learning to drive, for example, at first it takes a lot of cognitive energy, but then we automate it, right? Even to the point where sometimes I'll get in my car at work and pull into my garage at home and realize I have no recollection of the drive at all. I mean, that's the power of the system to kind of run on autopilot there. Um, the problem comes again when something requires me to actually engage in or invest that energy, that cognitive energy to be able to problem solve. Like driving down the road and then like today suddenly there's a snowstorm. Like automation's not going to work very well. I need to actually allocate the attention to that. So part of it comes to like motivation. And so there's like all sorts of theories of motivation, but one of the ones I find most useful in terms of like understanding like attention allocation is uh, expectancy and the value theory. And the idea with that one is um, the two fact. I mean, and again, this is overly simplistic, but the basic idea is if you understand the motivation from the sense of how likely is success, if I engage in this behavior is the one factor. And the other one is how much value do I place in this particular action or the outcome of this? If either of those are zero, then motivation is going to be zero. And so to understand, how much effort somebody puts in from this particular perspective, we need to understand both the likelihood that I feel like I'm going to be successful and how much I actually value success in this endeavor. So if I'm looking at any one particular situation, how much attention do I put it into something? Well, part of it has to do with how much do I value the outcomes. And on the other one, how successful do I think I'm going to be? And if either of those waver at all, then that might actually impact how much attention I actually am willing to invest in a particular process.
Okay, I gotta stop you there.
Okay.
I wrote down like 20 words. Um, eh, so so, because this is it is the same in organizations, it's just harder
Yeah.
because it's, people times people times people, so it's
Exactly.
orders of magnitude harder, right?
Yeah.
But you talked about engaging, investing, motivation, cognitive energy, effort.
Yeah.
So paying attention, maybe not all the time, but the kind of attention that we want to pay is there's a cost to it. It
There's
takes effort.
yeah.
And and so if we wanna direct our attention, put it that way, if we wanna direct our attention to something, really important, then that that requires us to invest more than the default.
Yes. Right.
And so
Exactly.
you said we're cognitive economizers, so if we don't have to invest anything, then our attention can go wherever and it's not work, and we kinda like that.
Yeah.
But if there's something that's worthwhile and we wanna accomplish it, then we have to turn away from that, which requires focused effort,
Yeah. 100%.
okay? So so and then you said, "But we do this calculation." I'm an accountant, so
Mhm.
this is helpful to me, and this calculation is the likelihood of success and then the extent that of success we're gonna have. This is the opposite of the risk matrix that you look at where it's the probability of failure and the impact of failure.
Right.
It's this
Yeah.
it's the same formula, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can convince yourself that I'm likely to succeed or I'm likely enough to succeed at something that I value enough, then I can justify directing the attention to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the in a nutshell. That's the premise. Yeah.
Right. So if I'm a leader of an organization, then there's maybe two things I got to think about. One is what do I put my attention on? And the other is what do I want people in the organization to put their attention on? Um, I don't know if I'm going to get to both of these, but we'll just go back to the leader as a individual. They have to put their attention on the thing that they think is going to have the most value,
Yeah.
or the most value for the least cost, or the most likelihood that it's going to turn out okay. And those are all hard things when you're talking about moving in an organization in a direction that it hasn't gone before.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't think I have the quotation. No, actually, I do know who said it. Was Andy Grove, who was one of the founders of Intel, and he was critical of businesses that there's a hard thing they need to do, and they don't understand it. They don't know what
Mhm.
to do, and it looks really hard, so they go do something to look like they're busy, like making an acquisition,
Yeah.
right? And so you do something that looks like it's progress, but deep down, you know there's another thing that's progress that's harder and maybe not even as likely to succeed. And this little calculation kicks out, well, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then there's the leaders who, um, just by habit, but maybe growing up as an entrepreneur where you have to solve all the problems, they don't direct any attention. It's all reactive.
Yeah.
You go into work, the phone starts ringing, people come to your office, customer calls, whatever, and then you just do the thing that requires, and you go home, and you spend a lot of energy all day, but you didn't invest any in directing your attention,
Yeah.
and so I guess that's psychology because that's one person, and so this is completely portable to one person if they're the leader of a part of an organization is they are cognitive economizers. There's gotta be something that's gonna get them out of their chair and get them going on a particular task if it's necessary. We'll quickly do the calculation and get ourselves out of it if we can. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we do, right? We'll look at that and say, okay, um, if again, if I don't value the process, again, if I'm not a leader, but I'm an employee and I've got a task to do, typically, again, how much effort am I going to put into that particular task? A lot of that is defined by how much value am I going to be successful? And value, I mean, comes in many different forms. I mean, value could be, I don't get fired, so I need to do this particular task. If I'm a leader of an organization, I think the same calculation dynamics apply, but again, it might be a different in terms of how I define value and all those kinds of things. But I think from a psychological perspective, the basic premise is essentially the same. Is we often again get stuck in this rut of um, trying to expend again the least amount of resources that we can to be able to get what we want. And again, I think if we look over and over and over again, especially a lot of the work that I do in digital media, that's really where the problem lies. Is that the digital media allows for that escape from supposed effort, right? It allows us to escape those kinds of things. And again, attention, 100% like that, right? I can distract myself. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, all those kinds of things, I can find shortcuts for processing. All those things are available, via digital media. But again, it's not the only medium, but definitely that they could see the total peril in that as well.
Okay, that's very helpful. So one of the roles that I play, is I act as a guide to leaders of businesses, and I use the term guide very carefully. But in this context, if I wanna guide a leader to do the most impactful thing in their organization, uh, we have to figure out what that is. What's the leverage point in the organization that's the most valuable change that you could make to increase the flow of value in your organization? And so that's why I developed Essential Dynamics, so we can have that conversation.
Mhm.
But as a guide in the conversation, I'm trying to help the leaders see that, so that when they do the calculation of expectancy and value, they say that's worth me committing to.
Right.
Uh, I I'm very I'm not likely to be able to pick what it is they should focus on because they know their business better
Right.
than I do, but I can help them see their business in perhaps a different way and then identify the leverage point. But then through a conversation, I can help them recognize the value of attacking that leisure point pouring their attention and focus into that as opposed to a bunch of other things that
Yeah,
they're more comfortable doing.
for sure.
That sounds a lot like what a therapist would do to a person.
Yeah,
With no, not I didn't say do to a person, that's not what I mean. Do with a person.
yeah, and essentially, I mean, it kind of works out the same thing, right? Okay, you have this goal. Okay, like, how are you going to accomplish the goal? How much effort are you going to put into the goal? And I think, and again, going back to, I like to work with kids a lot because I find with, if we go on the individual level, that this often is a barrier for adults in terms of change, life change. Is I could change. I know the path how I can change, but the effort to make that change is more than the cost of, or at least in my own internal calculations of actually just living with it and not doing anything. And so, like, even that's fine. It's not therapeutic, but I find in my own life sometimes, like, I'll have a project that I want to work on at home, and I don't exactly know how it's going to work out. And I sit and I stew and I think about it, and I come up with plans and all the reasons why it won't work and all the things I'm worried about. And then after a year, I finally just, jump into it. And it's like 10-minute project that I get done that I've been sitting stewing about. Um, and so the same type of thing, right? Like, okay, so here's what you need to do. Sometimes you just need to take that first step. But again, going through that whole process of, um, you know, just something we talked about last time, normalizing this idea of effort, right? That good things, important things are probably going to require effort, and so coming down to how much do you value that change, and how much effort are you willing to put into that particular change. And so going back to what I was saying, this is why I like working with kids a lot of times, because I find often kids are a little bit more willing to, or at least they don't have the capacity. Maybe I'll put it that way. They don't have the capacity to escape and avoid like many adults do.
Which is something that you learn over time, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I wanna go a couple directions before we wrap here, and one of them is, I think it's easier than I thought it would be. How does a leader use these principles in an organization? Well, the same way that the guide uses them with the leader is you have to help people understand, here's the system we're working in, here's the leverage point which we feel is gonna have the highest impact. Here's all the value that's gonna come from that, and, we know you can put in the effort.
Yeah.
Like, if people can see their way of participating in that, and they can see the value and they're confident that that is the leverage point, then they're way more willing to kind of step in and do the work. And I've seen that many times. If it's not clear that that intervention is going to make a difference, or if the perceived cost is too high, or if they don't really care about the outcome, then motivational speeches or whatever isn't going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that, if they think that whatever they do is pointless anyway, that it's not actually going to change anything, I think that also sometimes gets in there as well, in terms of change. Like, yeah, I could put in this effort and I value it, but it's going to fail regardless. So,
It's not we tried that a million times and nothing happened, and
yeah.
I yeah, and so now you'll get malicious compliance or passive resistance, and, it won't work, and that'll be a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because
Yeah.
people aren't putting in the effort that would be required to make it work anyway.
Yeah.
I just wanna introduce, to listeners, another little concept that I use in Essential Dynamics. It's quite natural, it resonates, and we've been bouncing around a lot today, so I just wanna name it, and that is that I believe that there are 4 flows in an organization as you're trying to get stuff done, and you've referred to value a bunch of times. So, value flow is when you do the thing that the organization is set up to do, and so you're accomplishing, the customers are getting the product, so that's value flow. Another one that's related, we don't have to talk about much today, is resource flow, which is, and for a company, it's like cash. Like, if I convey the value, do I get paid for it? And then do I have the cash to take care of my own needs and, keep the system moving? Um, and and then there's information flow, which is how is it going? And downstream, can you feed that back upstream? Faster, slower, hotter, colder, good job, not a good job, we need more, all that kind of information stuff. That's a different flow. And I think there's value to that. But then the last flow I like to talk about is energy flow, and particularly like human energy flow. So what you did for me today is you said, here's some simple math. We have the value and we have the energy. And if someone can get inside their head that the value is worth the energy, they'll do it. And if they're not, they won't. And then I'll add to that in the context of a flow is that is a self-reinforcing system that when you do the thing that produces the value and you know it's valuable, then you get the energy to go back in and do it again. So, for example, you're a teacher. I've had that experience this year. You talked about teaching to a blank screen compared to being in a class with real humans, seeing the light go on, and you say, "This is why I do this," and you can go back the next day and do it again because the energy flow loop is pretty tight and it's efficient. So, is that energy flow, value flow thing, I'm forcing this on, but I think that's what you're describing to me.
Yeah, different words, but exactly the same process in terms of how we make those kinds of decisions about where we allocate our attentional resources and other stuff. Like in psychology, we often talk about executive function, which is the part of that whole attention system where we do that allocation, right? Like um, we're attending to information, we're attending stuff all the time. How much do I allocate here versus here? Ignoring information, all those kinds of, again, that's we call it executive function. You call it, I can't remember what you called it, whatever it was.
Information flow,
Yeah.
but I'm saying you guys stole executive function from us,
True. Yes.
and then we take energy flow, motivation, and we took it from the psychologists and put it in the whole organization. But we're just working with people here, so
Yeah.
it's the same stuff. Okay, so, um, I think we landed on the same page on this one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, and so I'm gonna say, you said we use our executive function to allocate our attentional resources, and that's the job of a leadership of an organization. More than anything else is where do we put our time and attention? Let's design a system that optimizes that, and then we know where to put our time and attention. And I don't think that's done very well in organizations. And we also know that when we look at our own lives, we're like, you know, every day I could have done that better. There's always opportunity for improvement. There's also some amazing things we accomplish because of the times when we do hard things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, the other thing to kind of add on, and I think you kind of alluded to this, and I think it's important, and it's one of the pieces that's often missed in this whole process is again, we would refer to like reflective practice or evaluation, where we do the thing and then we circle back and actually have that. If it's, again, from a psychological perspective, that internal kind of reflection on how did that go? What could I improve? How could I do that better? Which I think, unfortunately, sometimes is one of the steps that's often missed at an individual level, that we just keep, especially if you're in a reactive kind of mode where you're just reacting to stuff rather than um, like an improvement or a formative kind of a process where we're actually trying to improve something, which that reflection is absolutely critical for that.
No, I agree. That's very strong. And one of the ways I look at that is you can't see the system from inside the system. So a reflective practice is actually stepping out and
Yeah.
observing. And often that requires like something else, like an outside observer to ask you questions.
Hmm.
So again, I'm a guide to a business leader. You can talk to a therapist. You can have a coach that says, well, let's watch the tape and see how you perform. That's stepping outside and looking at the system for feedback, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. I was trying to think if I've had a psychologist on the show before because I wanted one on early, and, so thank you so much. I'm probably just gonna save up my questions and have you come back, Jason.
Anytime,
Very
anytime.
good. So remind us of your book and its website.
The book that I have is called Beyond the Screen: Resilient Kids in a Digital World. And it's a short read, but it's geared for parents and others who maybe are worried about kids' digital habits and development in general. And that is available either on Amazon or on my website, beyondthescreen.ca, with dashes in between each of the words.
Awesome. Jason, thanks so much again. You've taught, me and taught our listeners, and, I'm gonna really work hard on using my executive function to allocate my attentional resources better, and don't do dumb things. And, until next time, everyone, use that executive function to consider your quest.